Hello everyone, welcome back to the series, When the Crown Falls. Episode 12. She's on the run. Back on the field, Annie decided to jog in place, which would cover her nervousness. This whole scenario would have gone left if she hadn't at the last minute decided put on her gym wear. Why the sudden urge to work out up here? Marcus tilted his head as he asked. She stretched her hands out, then touched her belly. Mr. Cooper, look at me. Have you ever seen me this big before? I have to do something about this belly, sir. He mumbled as he squinted his eyes. Have you seen Julia? Well, yes. She was at the coffee shop this morning. She shook her head. Always the same attitude, bossy, arrogant, intimidating the staff. A sudden realization hit her. Maybe she shouldn't be talking like this about the boss's wife. She looked up at Marcus, searching his face for a reaction, but his expression was unreadable. Blank. She continued cautiously. She doesn't really talk to people that much. The sound was barely audible, but she still caught the flicker of suspicion in his eyes. Is something wrong, Mr. Cooper? She asked, her voice faltering. Is Mrs. Cooper missing? I mean, I saw her enter the boutique after she left the coffee shop. Marcus stiffened. He clearly wasn't pleased with the questions about Julia. Her heart pounded against her chest. I'm sorry, she rushed on. I haven't seen her since the coffee shop. As she spoke, her eyes briefly flicked toward the SUV's driver. He stared straight ahead, his face devoid of emotion. That, more than anything, unnerved her. She recognized him. Marcus's cleaner. The one people whispered about like a bogeyman. James. She was standing alone with the two most feared men in her town, and the weight of it was beginning to crush her. Marcus nodded slowly. Right. The word landed like a conclusion, not an agreement. Guess you heard about that little scene, Marcus added. He looked her up and down as if scanning for the truth, as if trying to find a sliver of nervousness. Alice said nothing. He shook his head and sighed, a thin smile tugging at his mouth. Julia, that woman, she thinks she runs this town. He continued looking suspiciously at Alice. She smiled and nodded her head in agreement. Yeah, she said with a light-hearted laugh. That's Julia, all right. This may be hard to hear, though, but let's face it, nobody really likes her. A hint of recentness registered on Alice's face, further driving home the point that she didn't care much for Julia. I realize that, Marcus said, giving her the benefit of his doubt. He turned and hopped back into the car without saying another word. I'm heading into town. Keep up the exercise. His eyes lingered. You're looking good, Alice. I will come join you soon. Alice nodded, her smile tight. As they drove away, it felt as though the stress left with him. Her knees buckled, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she could breathe again. She collapsed onto the gravel as her legs gave way. Julia emerged from her hiding place and limped toward Alice. I can't do this, Alice said, her voice trembling. Her hands shook violently, her heart pounding so hard it felt as though it might tear free from her chest. Julia burst into tears. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to drag you into this. The tears poured freely now, fueled by frustration, years of suffering under Marcus's grip, and the weight of convincing herself it was all worth it. She slumped to the ground next to Alice and yanked off her glasses. That's when Alice really saw her. Jesus, she gasped. What the hell? He did this to you. Her heart sank at the sight of Julia's swollen face, her bruises, the way she could barely stand. Despite everything, she couldn't help the thought that crossed her mind. How the mighty have fallen. Julia, battered and bruised, needed her help. "I have nowhere to go and no one to help," Julia choked out. "And I know it's my own actions that got me here." Her voice cracked, and she winced, trying to wipe away her tears. Alice sighed. She didn't know why she was doing this. She knew, without a doubt, that if their roles were reversed, this woman would never lift a finger to help her. And if Marcus ever discovered her involvement, she could vanish too, just like her brother. The thought made her stomach drop. She studied Julia, broken, silent, barely holding herself together. And the answer came anyway. Leaving her to Marcus's whims would make Alice no better than the people who looked away. What kind of woman would she be if she did that? Her mind raced. Marcus was looking for her. There was no time for anything complicated. "Okay," she said finally, her voice low and steady despite the fear tightening her chest. "Here's the plan." But before she could finish, they heard it. Faint sounds drifting through the darkness. Julia ducked again, panic seizing her. Alice spotted the bobbing lights up the hill, moving around the area of Marcus's mansion. Flashlights. Too many to be random. It could only mean one thing. Marcus had given the order to start searching. "We have no time, Julia," Alice whispered. She grabbed her hand and pulled her toward the car. Julia winced but trudged along, forcing herself to ignore the pain. Alice popped open the car trunk and motioned for Julia to get in. Julia shook her head. Alice's brows furrowed. "Excuse me." She stepped toward Julia, her anger no longer hidden. "What do you think this is?" Her voice dropped, sharp and dangerous. "Get in there, Julia, because you are not going to get me killed. Marcus is looking for you. If you sit in the car, someone will see you." Her eyes burned into Julia's. "Tell me, what do you think will happen to us then?" She waited, daring her to answer. "Get in the trunk," she said finally, through gritted teeth. Julia hopped toward the trunk, tears streaming down her face. Alice, now operating on pure anger, was no longer careful. She ignored Julia's cries as she shoved her into the trunk. Her hands were rough, her movements reckless. She was enraged. One minute she had been curled up on her couch, watching her favorite TV show. Next, she was helping the wife of a madman. One who wouldn't hesitate to make you vanish the moment he decided you'd crossed him. "I hate you," Alice sputtered, the words ripping out of her in a harsh, bitter tone, before she could stop herself. Julia stiffened, caught off guard by the outburst. "Everybody in this town hates you," Alice continued. "So I'm going to see it as a blessing, to finally be rid of you. And if God really answers prayers..." Her eyes hardened as they locked onto Julia's. "Your husband will be next." Menace burned in her gaze. "Marcus has held this town hostage for over 35 years, Alice went on. "Everyone bends to his will. He treats us like pets. Do well, and you're rewarded with praise and gifts. Step out of line." Her voice wavered. "And you pay for it." Tears pricked at her eyes. "My brother stood up to him 6 years ago. I haven't seen or heard from him since." She scoffed bitterly. "And Anetta. Almost 20 years later, no one knows where she is." Alice looked down at Julia with open contempt. "And you? You had power, influence, protection. And instead of using it for good, you used it to hurt us even more, just because you could." Julia closed her eyes as the tears continued to stream, the weight of those words crushing. Memories of indifference, cruelty, and arrogance surfaced one by one. "I'm so sorry, Alice," she whispered. I can't take back my stupidity, but... The sentence collapsed unfinished. That name lingered in her mind. Anetta. Discarded. Erased. Now she understood. No one vanished from Marcus's world by accident. The realization hollowed her chest. The massive sports complex felt like it was closing in on her. Basketball court, football field, running track, and in the main building, a swimming pool, gym, and activity areas. Unused but maintained. Marcus had claimed it was for the townspeople, a gift. But it sat too far up the hill. No buses, hardly any taxis, and he knew it. It was never meant for them, only for Marcus and those who belonged to him. Alice exhaled, some of the fury draining from her, but a nagging urgency to leave. I'm not mad at you, she said quietly. I'm mad at myself for answering your call in the first place, for putting my entire family in danger, for the woman this whole town despises. She scanned the dark field. The lights were getting closer. Soon they would be on the ball field. We have to go, she whispered. Once we're out of town, I'll let you out, okay? She slammed the trunk shut and rushed into the driver's seat. She decided against turning on the headlights. The field was just visible enough to navigate without them. Her grip tightened on the steering wheel as she eased forward. She reached the main road and drove a few meters before finally switching on the headlights. Thank you for joining me, my story lovies. Remember, every voice matters, and every story has power. If you love good drama and Caribbean stories, don't just watch. Join the family. Hit subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and stay tuned for the next intriguing episode of When the Crown Falls.